everybody to the Friday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. We have a great show for you. Manda Dude Stern is still off on vacation, but we are joined by Julie Strauss Levin, who is senior counsel at America First Legal, has served on 2 presidential commissions during the Trump administration. She's also done tons of advocacy work and continues to do tons of advocacy work for many organizations. But it's important to note America First Legal fights for everybody in America. And I don't think a lot of people know this. They don't take money from anybody. If you win the case, lose the case, it's all on donations. They're an exceptional organization. So I want to thank Julie for joining us today. I got to tell a quick Julie story. So this is pre the election. And Julie, I think, was using me as a barometer if Trump was going to win. And we were texting a lot back and forth. And I had all the confidence in the world. And I'll never forget the night of the election. It was either via text or via phone call. She's like, "How you feeling?" And I said, 60-40. And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm just playing it safe." And because I had been 100% until that point, and I was like 60-40. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. I just want to know, you said the dude is out. You didn't refer to me as the dudette. Like, I'm really kind of bummed about that. That needs to go on my title here.
Okay, the dudette. We have the dudette with us, Julie Strauss Levin, and we have the dudette with us, or the greater one. There's a lot going on right now.
You're not gonna let them know that I'm here? That's fine.
I need to interrupt this amazing intro and introduce Golan, because he's the guy. He's the star. He's one of the stars of the show. So if you're not going to do it, Judah, like, how can we leave the man out? Not cool.
And I want to point one thing out about Julie. I don't know if it's said often enough, but it's important to note she taught her husband everything he knows. So we're really lucky to have her here.
Thank you.
I agree 100%. She's not here because of her husband. She's here because of who she is. And I love the work that she does. It's extremely important for America and for the world, especially for Israel. It's incredible the work you do. So that's why you're here. And it's so greatly appreciated. We need more fighters like you. And on that note, though, let's get the show started, because this has been a busy day, a really busy day. And Julie's a lawyer, so I will throw this to you first, because you explained to us before the show. So Trump got a lot of victories today, but you brought up something that I don't think a lot of people will realize about it. So if you could please talk about that.
Sure. So there were several Supreme Court decisions that actually came out in the course of this whole week. And before we dive into some of them, it's an interesting concept where we are as a country. So the Supreme Court opens its session in October, and then the following June, decisions come out. So basically, the last week in June, we're all sitting there wringing our hands. What is the Supreme Court going to say? How are these 9 people in their robes going to opine on matters that really affect all of us on a daily basis? Which I think there's something really wrong with the system when the Supreme Court has such a degree of power, right? I mean, the Constitution has 3 branches of government, and our founding fathers intended for there to be this inherent tension amongst these 3 branches, each branch having its own set of authorities and so forth. So there's a thought, and I'm part of this thought process, that the judiciary branch to some degree has more power than it should. But to get to your question, so today was the last day of this session, 24-25, and there were several important decisions that came out today. I didn't have an opportunity to read the decisions because of other things going on, but there's 2 that I think particularly are worth discussing. One is this birthright citizenship case, and I can give you my opinion on whether the Constitution affords birthright citizenship to illegal aliens or not. But for this particular case, there's several outlets that are, surprisingly, because we know the media never gets anything incorrectly, that have framed this decision incorrectly. The headlines have included "Big Win for the Trump Administration on Birthright Citizenship." The correct title, in my opinion, should have been "The Big Win for the American People," not with respect to birthright citizenship as much as this issue of nationwide injunctions. So if you think about it, there are almost like 680 or plus district courts across the United States. District courts and appellate courts are actually a creation of the legislative branch. So when the Constitution was written, there was only one contemplated and addressed court reference in the Constitution, and that is the Supreme Court. And what Congress did, Judiciary Act of 1789, was to create this entire court system, dividing the country into districts and regions and so forth. And there were district court judges who were granted jurisdiction. Somebody can go into court based upon geography and whether they have what's known as standing to bring a case. I could go into each section of that, but I'm just trying to give an overview here. So contemplated was, if you have a case and you pass the test for standing, the decision on that case should only be between those two parties, the plaintiff and the defendant, before that particular judge. And if you're not happy with the decision, either party can appeal up to the appellate level, and potentially, if the Supreme Court wishes to take the case, to the Supreme Court. What is probative of this particular decision today was after President Trump signed his executive order saying that this concept of birthright citizenship is nowhere in the Constitution, and from this day forward, there shall be no such thing as birthright citizenship. Lawsuits were filed in very strategic places in the United States, not surprisingly, in blue states, before very radical leftist Marxist judges. These judges issued injunctions that not just affected the parties in that state, but the entire United States. So the Trump administration said, time out, can't do this, and appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court today said, no. There's no such thing as a nationwide injunction in the least.
And this is, I just want to jump in for our audience's sake on this too, because I think it's really important. What you're saying is, it's not just important, it's informative, right? Because many people read these headlines and the headlines are just screaming in all caps, major win for Trump, or major this for Trump, or major that for Trump. First of all, this isn't about Trump. I mean, let's be real. Right now, Trump may be the president, so some of these things may be things he's in great favor of, but these are things that are for America. All of these decisions, and they're not making a decision on whether they want to give Trump a win or not. So even that framing of it is false, right? That's a fake framing. But beyond that, for instance, I'm looking at a headline here. It says, Trump scores major win in birthright citizenship case as Supreme Court curbs nationwide injunctions. Okay. Well, if you didn't read on and if you didn't understand what that means, you would think that the opposite of what you're saying. No, they said birthright citizenship. They have a definitive answer. But of course, that's not what's happening. What it means is, and just to put it in layman's terms, lower courts can't block federal policies across all 50 states just because they disagree politically. You can't go get some activist judge to say, I'm going to freeze the entire country because my courtroom in Seattle says it's not good enough. Because that's not justice. That is judicial tyranny. And so ultimately, in this birthright case and in many of these others, the ruling wasn't about whether Trump can end birthright citizenship. It was about how courts work. That's what people need to understand. I think that's what you're trying to give them here. And I think this is incredibly important because even though it's a little wonky, sure, it's important people understand the process by which this goes down.
You're right. And you said it. You should go to law school. Go on. I mean, really,
I dropped out of law school, so I'm
right off to you, my friend. And another way to illustrate this is there have been nationwide injunctions that have been issued by judges, not just with respect to birthright citizenship, and it's even happened before the Trump administration. What makes it particularly appalling, disgusting, but totally expected is that there have been more nationwide injunctions issued just under this president currently than many other presidents cumulatively. So
it's at least 55. Yeah. And I think it's really important to bring up because I'm all about messaging. And anybody that listens to me or listens to the show or reads me in any chat, I'm constantly talking about messaging. Now, I know that what the messaging is going to be on this. We all know what the messaging is going to be, is that Trump wants Hispanics out of the country. Trump wants everybody out of the country. He wants to deport everybody. And we're going to have, God forbid, another Roe v. Wade on our hand to carry into the midterms or to carry into the next elections. And so it's the the Trump administration's job right now is to message this as best they can with the people they have. I don't forget about the legacy media shows. Get on every podcast you could get on and explain this situation as well as Julie just did. Because Julie, if we don't write the narrative, they'll write it for us, and that cost us 2 election cycles.
No, I agree with you 100%. Although maybe Golan can write it a little better, because that was spot on, my friend. That was totally a home run.
You know what, though? It's not that difficult to see what they're going to try to shift the messaging to be.
No, you're right.
And by the way, if you want to know, go look at the dissent. Go look at Justice Jackson's dissent right now. Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote a dissent that basically said, if one judge in rando wherever town can't stop everybody all over the place, then no one is safe. I believe that's a quote from her dissent. Well, no one is safe. It's not even a dissent. It's a doomsday blog post.
Well, look who's saying it, right? I mean, she can't define a woman, so a little bit of a problem there.
You know what happens when she does that? It's the same thing when someone tells me, and I don't remember what the number was anymore, 14,000 babies are going to die by tomorrow. If some, the same kind of hyperbolic nonsense. She, in her dissent, threw out, if Trump is able to do this, 150,000 babies a year will lose birthright citizenship. It's like, well, first of all, where did you come up with that number? She didn't back it up in any way. She's just trying to defend unelected judges overriding elections. And so we don't have to look very far to see what their messaging is going to be.
Even on a fundamental basis, what's super interesting about the quote that you made about Jackson is she so revealed herself, not surprising, but she so revealed herself because she opined, she made a decision, she took a stand, if you will, about the merits when the merits have really not, that wasn't before the court. So they have not discussed birthright citizenship in a meaning, that still has to go back up to the court. So she's already said, decision made, there is a constitutional right. You're not going to kill them. They just can't be here. So like have your child and don't come. Like that's pretty avoidable, right? So
by the way, can I just, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to point out the ridiculous hypocrisy of someone who is so pro-abortion telling us that this ruling is going to ignore harm to unborn children if it goes through. I'm sorry, the cognitive dissonance, it just makes my head spin.
But yet, it actually does make a lot of sense to me, and I'll tell you why. Judah, you are so right. 99% of life is marketing. When I was trained as an attorney, a lot of the times when I was at law firms first, they would say, when we had a case, they'd say, okay, no comment. We can't comment. It's active litigation, right? I went in-house to the company that produced Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, and various other shows. And we were constantly under attack. The animal activists who literally wrote the book on how to be Marxist, like if you want to study the mind, like it went from animal activism to environmental to, the Hamasian, whatever, like, it's just like change your shirt and you're a paid protester. Right. And so we were constantly under attack. We constantly had lawsuits, whether it was by the animal activists or under investigation by the feds, because the animal activists got them to, it's the whole thing. And very early on, I said, if we don't respond, if we let them own the narrative, we're screwed. Like we've got to get out there and talk about our animal care and how great it is before we come in and say, no, we do treat them well. Like we need to own it. So you're right, Judah, is people relate to that. It's like trademark and copyright. Like you walk down an aisle at a supermarket where the soup is, and way at the end, you see a red and white can, it's Campbell's, because it's the power of the brand and it's the power of the messaging. So what does the left do? Exactly what you just said. They take an issue that they couldn't care less about, babies, because they're rah-rah for abortion, and they steal our language. It's such a Marxist thing to own the language. So some of the most radical organizations use our terms. George Soros has the Democracy Alliance. He doesn't give a crap about democracy. There's the Brennan's Constitutional Center. They hate the Constitution, but they're smarter than we are, the royal we, because they take these terms and they steal them and they co-opt them and then they stomp on them.
Look no further than the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Exactly.
Right? And I use this as a perfect example. Everybody knows I work with Ben Stein. We do a show together. Ben donated for quite a while. He actually thought that this was a good cause. He had no idea they were a bunch of anti-Semitic, anti-conservative, anti-America freaks. And it wasn't until somebody brought it to his attention that he cut off funding immediately. But branding is everything, and we're terrible at it. And which brings up the bigger point. I look at Trump's cabinet right now, and I look at them as all-stars. I really do. You want to compare and contrast? Let's compare Hegseth to Austin. Let's compare whoever the Secretary of Transportation is to Buttigieg going on paternity leave. He really has put together, for the most part, an eclectic group of all-stars. They go to work every day, they do their job, and they're really good at following the president's lead in how to fight back.
I agree with you.
He could pick his cabinet, but he can't pick the House and he can't pick the Senate. And this is a huge issue we have. And Republicans often complain, why is stuff not getting done more? Well, Trump could only pick the cabinet. This is the best. He's got the best he's got. He has to deal with what he has. He doesn't have 240 votes, Julie, in the House. He's got maybe 217. The Senate minus Rand Paul and maybe Susan Collins, he's dealing with 52. People don't realize the job he's done with the limited resources he's afforded within the Congress and the Senate.
100%. And it's funny when you said that they go to work. You know, we live about 40 miles outside DC, and during the 4 years of the Marxist Biden-Harris, because, we have to do that whole male-female thing, administration, getting into DC was like, you were there. I went into DC for a meeting. I don't remember. It was like February or something. And I get in the car. I'm like, 40 minutes. I'm there. No problem. It was like an hour and a half. And I went, what the hell? And then I realized different administration, they're actually making people go to work. It was, you could see it, like, wow, people are working. There's like this concept where before it just it just struck me. I mean, that's not like this huge big share on the podcast.
No, but it is amazing. It's amazing when you can feel the difference. It's not just a concept. It's not just a theory or some hypothesis. I feel in the ether that this is a better thing. You can actually have real world situations where you can measure whether something has changed or not. And there's a lot of stuff that looks that way, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's even by the way, what's going on here. Steve, I'm going to dovetail back to something we were talking about a moment ago in terms of branding, right? If you think about what is the number one thing, if you were to say, what is America? We are a constitutional republic. I know that there's a lot of things that we can call ourselves, but ultimately that's really what we are. And this ruling today restores that more than anything. It restores the original balance of power. If that's not something we can crow about like roosters in the morning, I don't know what is. This reins in unelected judges. It restores the separation of power. It protects democratic accountability. It gives the power back to the people. It prevents judicial shopping and political warfare. Like, this is such a win. And it's not a win that's like partisan and crazy. This is a win that just says, hey, remember who we are? Let's get back to that. So talk about make America great again. Again, this is who we used to be. This is who we are now. All the stuff, all the lawfare and everything else that people have been using can be put aside, and we can get back to just doing our jobs. Right. And your story of seeing people actually getting back to work, that's a real world example of it. Right. I love it.
And, you mentioned that I'm with AFL, and I was asked that's to describe what is America First, like what makes it special, right? And to me, the mission is following and protecting America First principles. And I like to say on behalf of real people. So we may be physically located inside the Beltway, but it's real Americans we care about. And we understand, and we go after. And we hold this government, this administration accountable as well. It just happens to be that like this administration actually cares about America First principles and upholding the Constitution. The last one sure as hell did not. So we were super busy, but we were engaging in government accountability, FOIA requests, unveiling and revealing that the prior administration was in cahoots with social media companies, literally spying on Americans, literally And we can talk about Israel and the anti-Semitism. I know we're going to do that, but the whole business about, oh, there was just like this one FBI office in Richmond that was spying on Catholics. Well, no, actually, it was being done many places. He knew about it, and it was alive and well in DC. So AFL reveals a whole bunch of information and holds the government accountable. But we also speak up and bring lawsuits on behalf of real Americans. But what makes us different, and I feel, and everybody, my colleagues feel too, at America First Legal, is not only do we do it boldly and with pride, and we talk about it, we don't say, sorry, we're in litigation, but we understand something. I phrase it this way when I'm asked the question. We are the custodians. We don't own it. We didn't write it, but we're the custodians of these America First principles. And it's our job. It's our job as all Americans, but we at AFL, from the legal perspective, believe it's our job as custodians to take care of it, to pass it on to the future generations. It's the Reagan quote, right? We're only, we're a generation away from extinction if we don't protect it. So
I absolutely love America First Legal. I've been there. I've met many of the lawyers from there. And again, I love the fact that, and obviously this is not a commercial for America First Legal, right. But I will do a commercial for them gladly any day of the week because I absolutely love what they do. They're everything the ACLU isn't. They're everything the ADL isn't. They're everything every group, or the Southern Poverty. They're everything that America needs. And again, there was an easy target with Stephen Miller, who's a complete patriot, who loves this country, and who started America First Legal with Gene Hamilton. It does amazing work, and I beg everybody, look it up. And again, I want to get back to something, though, with branding. So we suck at it.
No, you're right.
But plain and simple. So there was the Supreme Court ruled today in favor of Maryland parents who want to pull kids from classes with LGBTQ-themed books in it. Now, this is the easiest fight, and we don't know how to do it. And the reason I say this, Julie, is because anybody in their right mind would not want their kids at the age of 4 to whatever age learning about trans and queer, the gay thing and the lesbian thing. I have a different take on it than some might think. I don't really have a problem. That's becoming part of our society. You look at Scott Bessent. He's a married man with children, but they've been hijacked by the trans and the queer movement, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody's willing to say, we look at it as a disease or however you want, but we don't want our kids indoctrinated. It's plain and simple. Own the narrative. Stop being scared.
Well, you're 100% right. And you know who does talk about it? Rick Grinnell, who is an American patriot through and through, and he happens to be a good friend of mine, but he speaks about it publicly. And he said, if you're gay or lesbian, nobody in America cares. Here's the difference. He said, it's ruining and makes it hard for those who just want to live their lives. People are accepted. This whole LGBT, I call it LGBTXYZ because I can never keep up with like all the different letters that come.
Nobody can.
I kind of play stupid, which is not that difficult sometimes. They take this issue and they steal the show. So therefore they ruin it for those who want to be who they are, that nobody cares. I don't shove down other people's throat that I'm heterosexual, like it's none of your business, right? But this insistence that because I'm some way, you have to be some way. I think people say to me, well, like, where did this come from? Right? Like, what is such a push when it's like less than X% of one to whatever? Can't even do those fractions of our country that's into, actually trans or this or that. And my opinion is, this is a creation. This is so classic Marxism. Like, what are the two goals of the Marxists? No faith and no family. Because if you don't have faith, and I am extremely proud of being a Jew, and my faith is extremely pivotal to who I am. Every morning I wake up, I say the Modeh Ani. I know who I am. My kids are raised that way, and so forth. If you don't have faith, and it's not important to me whether someone's Catholic or Jewish or Christian, whatever. If you don't have faith and you don't have this sense of family, what do you have left? Which is exactly what Marx always wanted. No faith, no family. You have to turn to the federal government. You have to turn to government, whatever that government form is. And so all this whole trans nonsense, and that's what I really think it is, and it's just like sort of taken a whole life of its own, is another way to break down the nuclear family. I mean, I think that to me is what's pivotal, and that's gone to, when we can talk about the Maryland case, it's poisoning the minds of these kids. So you don't turn to mommy and daddy. It's like, it's actually, again, another example where the Marxists are so way ahead of us in their thinking. I have almost like envy for their devious, sick mind, because conservatives, we get up in the morning, we're mindful of faith and family and being good citizens, going to work, taking care. So like these are our priorities because we do believe in founding principles. So our job is less government, leave me alone. Their job, self-proclaimed, is more government. So this is their 24/7. That's why they're so ahead of us.
Listen, I think you're 100% correct. And Golan, I want to go to you on this because I think one of the things, there's two things. One of the things Julie forgot to mention is also they go on science. That's their whole thing. That's Marxism. That's Nazism. And as I've said before, I don't blame a kid for feeling out of place. Okay, all kids feel out of place. I'll raise my hand.
For
And
sure.
I just have to say one thing about God. A guy named Scott Redmond, God rest his soul. I often share this story. I'm sober. And he always would share at a 12-step meeting that when he was drinking, he had said to one of his kids asked him, is there a God? And Scott Redmond said no when he was drinking. And when he got sober, he realized there was no worse form of child abuse that he could have done to his child at that point. He said, you know, when you're alone at night and you're in bed and you're scared of the monsters, there's nothing else. There's nothing there to come and save you. That story always resonated with me. And whatever you want to call that power, there is something, I believe. 100%. I don't know how people could dispute it. But go on to get back to the other thing. You know, that dope Candace Owens who ignores Joseph Mengele, doesn't believe he exists. The left has really Mengelized our country with science, right? It's using them as guinea pigs. They're using children as guinea pigs, and nobody calls them out on it. They're scared to, or they don't know how to. I don't know what it is, but it's just wrong.
You know, I think it's interesting that you say it that way. I think this is something where clearly we are watching overreach when it comes to children happening on a regular basis, not just on this issue. I see it all over the place all the time. Obviously, when it comes to the trans stuff, transing children, obviously, when it comes to what's being put into our classrooms, you know, like Julie, I am Jewish, I am Israeli. And I am also a professor. I've been teaching since I got out of the Army. That's been since the mid-90s. And I have watched fellow teachers of mine that did not agree with what is being forced down their throat, suddenly being handed stuff that is ahistorical, is frankly ascientific, masquerading as scientific, that is being shoved down the throats of children. This is happening every day, and in America more than almost any other place. And of course, part of that is because Qatar is paying for all of these classrooms to be corrupted. And that goes not just to people like to talk about the universities, which is undoubtedly true, but there is plenty of evidence that Qatari money has been flowing into grade schools and especially into high schools. You know, people come to the universities already primed for SJP to continue brainwashing them as a result. So no, I agree with you. I think children have become major victims when it comes to this. The interesting thing is, I don't necessarily have a problem with a book in which, let's say, two dads exist as a couple. I actually don't have a problem with that. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not. If it's tangential, I'm a storyteller. You know, by trade, I am a screenwriter. So, okay, if that's the story, is that we're talking about Bobby going to school. His two dads say goodbye to him in the morning. Maybe the kids are like, wait, two dads? You know, they haven't seen that before. No problem. The problem that I have is when the two dads become the focal point of the story. Uncle Bobby's Wedding is one of the books that's being talked about in this particular case. That is not just having a couple in the background. That is saying this couple is what you have to pay attention to. Did you notice it was two dads? Did you notice it's not a regular nuclear family? Did you notice it was different? By the way, it would be weird if they did that with a heterosexual couple too, at the ages they're talking about. So that's my issue, is what exactly is being shoved down the throat. Not that it's just people love to pile on the right or pile on people who don't want something like this in their kids' school and say, oh, you're homophobic or you're anti-LGBTQ-XYZ. I'm stealing Julie's thing here, which is not true. That is not true at all. I am someone who, I was in the theater world. There's no way to be anti-LGBT if you're in the theater world. I have my degree in theater, and as does my wife. That's where we met, was in college, studying theater. So that's not true. What I have a problem with is exactly what you're talking about, Judah. When kids are being used as weapons to try to change the narrative, that is when it gets disgusting.
In this case, well, here's what's important about this case. Parents in our country have a constitutional right to parent their children. My mom's an interior designer. I grew up around people who were gay, straight, this. I never thought about it, never cared, whatever. We didn't talk about it. But let's say for a minute I was homophobic. Let's just argue that for a minute. And I don't want my children to see a book. Why is it not okay for me to say, you know what? I want to opt my child out of seeing that. Well, you're homophobic. Okay, you want to pick on me? Fine. You want to name call me? I'm still a parent. As much as you want to shove X down your kid's throat, and you're entitled to, go have at it. I think it's whatever for you. You do, you be you. But let me be me. And that is what the Supreme Court said today. Parents have this. Again, I didn't read the opinion, but I'm just saying conceptually, the Supreme Court said parents have the right to pull their kids out. When a public school says you cannot opt out, that your children must sit there, they must be exposed to something that you as a parent on a religious basis say no, that's not America. That's outside the Constitution. And that's what happened today. And that is an incredibly important case because that is happening throughout the United States. And you all have seen, whether it's people who are watching us tonight or you both personally, you've seen videos of these school boards where a parent will stand up and say, let me read page 22 or hold up a photo. And 100%. The entire board says no, we can't do that. It's offensive. Oh, okay. So you can't handle it. It's that, whatever that movie was where what's his name said, you can't handle the truth. But parents have to, but these little 4-year-olds have to. And what's even worse is schools won't even tell their parents what's going on.
By the way, you pointed out something that most people, again, who read the headline won't know about this case. This case does not stop them from having those books. This particular case, it does not stop them from teaching what they want to teach. It basically says if a parent is feeling uncomfortable, they notify the parents in advance what's coming, right? That's what they're asking districts to do. And then the parents have an opportunity to pull the kids out of specific lessons that conflict with their faith. This is not really disruptive. It is Bobby's not going to be there on Tuesday because you want to do the gay porn lesson. That is what that is. And that's a different thing than saying, I forbid you, I shut it down. That's not even what this case is about. So the hyperbolic, again, response is beyond what the actual decision is.
Exactly.
And I want to move on to something, and I really didn't think about this till right now or in the last few minutes, because all week long we've been discussing, last couple weeks, it's been the faux MAGA or whatever people want to call it. And Julie, I know I've been screaming from the top of my lungs about how the left became the left. It was a few, and they thought, oh, we could deal with the few. Then BLM came out, and it was a lot more than a few. 5 became 20, 20 became 70, and before you know it, every Democrat has pretty much been bitten by is a zombie. Literally, there's no brain function. I mean, that's what the left has become right now. And this week, in the past couple of weeks, has been a coordinated attempt to try to take over MAGA by certain people. And there are people that saw this happening with big voices, one of them, thank God, being your husband, and who saw this and said, we are going to stomp this out. We could not let this infest our party. If we let them take over our party, we could become the left, the horseshoe theory. And right now, Tucker, Candace, all these people are on an island by themselves. Thank God to Ben Shapiro, to your husband, and yourself. people that have been screaming back at them, you don't own MAGA. This was a big week for making America great again, and this was a huge and monumental week for Trump. He had people behind him, as opposed to last time. The last go around, everybody stood behind him that needed to stand behind him, and everybody that was a fake proved to be a fake. And I want to just say this, because if you could go on X right now, and when Mark would post something, or Ben Shapiro, it would get 3,000, 10,000 likes, maybe 10,000 likes. But if you looked at Tucker, Jackson Hinkle, these crazy wackadoos, Candace Owens, they were getting 100,000 likes. If you don't think those were China bots, 100% they were, but those are still Tucker's thoughts. Those are still Jackson Hinkle's thoughts. And I'm so proud for you, Julie, and for your husband, and for all the people that fought back to stand up for this country.
Thank you. And there were the few and select, and I do think Mark led the fray. And I won't say who it is, but Mark and I sometimes we're selective. I'll post of his, he'll post of mine. We each do our own thing. But sometimes I'll take his posts and I'll push it out to certain people who I know we're going to, the whole domino effect. And I sent it out to a prominent group of some people. And one of them wrote back and said, "This is so great." I texted Mark and I said, "This was like so great. I'm so proud of him. So proud of you." And I looked at it and I was like, it's okay to sit in the back and go, go. And I said, yeah, Mark was great. Yeah, he told me that you reached out to him. But what are you doing? Like, step up. You need to step up. And he did. And maybe he would have done it on his own, but I don't know.
It's scary, Julie. It's very scary when you don't know what the landscape is exactly, and you're being fed a fake landscape on X. So you don't know which way is up, but you have to stay true.
This guy
and
did.
you have to, and he stayed true to himself, and he said, my audience is with me. He had faith that his audience would stay with him. And this is the scariest thing for a lot of people. Nobody wants to lose followers or audience. They don't. But for those that care, they have to not care about losing that.
That's what great men do.
And women.
And I say, yeah, and women. But historically, I think Bibi Netanyahu. I think it's funny. I don't know if you both know, you probably do, who Colonel Richard Kemp is. He's been on Mark's program. He's genius. And he's British. He led the joint forces in Afghanistan, or as he incorrectly says, Afghanistan, because he's British, years ago. And he is a huge Zionist, a huge friend of Israel. He's argued on behalf of Israel before that august body called the Jew-hating United Nations that wastes prime real estate in New York City. And I was talking to him about this very subject. And I was talking to him about Bibi. And I said, Richard, don't be offended, but Bibi is like Churchill on steroids. I know he's your guy. So he was pretending he was all offended. But it takes leaders. Sometimes I think that the three of us are witnessing a president and a prime minister that will not be seen again, certainly in my lifetime.
That's what scares me. I brought that up, Julie, and that terrifies me. Go ahead, Colin.
I want to point out something. I don't want to lose the point that you mentioned earlier, which directly reflects on all of the stuff we're talking about in terms of how the world is responding. Okay. You mentioned bots, Judah, and this is not something we've discussed before the show. It's something that I just was informed of as we were talking here. Someone sent me some interesting articles because they know we're going to talk about, what's happening in the world today. And two separate articles talked about something really obscure that no one is talking about. And that is that thousands of accounts that had been amplifying anti-American, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish accounts, as well as pro-Scottish independence and, basically anything that was going to cause chaos in the West, a bunch of accounts stopped working. They all shut down. Why did they shut down? Well, because America dropped some major bunker busters over in Iran, you might have heard, and apparently a bunch of the computers that were running all of those bots were down there as well. And so suddenly there's this whole massive thing that happened. I didn't even know about this. Apparently Iranian cyber operatives, some of them posing as like Glasgow nurses or American businessmen. And there's, football, people who are like doing fantasy football. Tons of these fake groups, all Tehran-linked networks aiming to stir division in the US, the UK, and in other Western areas. So to your point, Judah, about the bots and what's going on, but also to your point, Julie, about how we won't see people like Trump and Bibi getting credit, and we may never see people like them again. A big part of it is because of stuff like this. This is an unbelievable story that I don't think I've seen in any major publication. And it speaks to how propaganda spreads, how propaganda, all those clicks, the 100,000 clicks you're talking about, Judah. Well, we'll see how many clicks they start to get now that this particular bot farm is out.
Well,
and who knows how many more are out there.
Isn't
it was
that called
something
like
I noticed.
prop or something? Psychological
A psyop.
propaganda.
It's called a psyop. And Julie, just so you know, they changed the name, and I brought this up the other day. It used to be called the false flag, and it was a lot like climate change. Global warming stopped working, so they rebranded it. False flag was very identified with Alex Jones, so they changed it, in my humble opinion, to psyop. But the interesting thing, Julie, is their numbers have fallen. But people like Mark and Ben Shapiro, their numbers are the same, if not higher. And they must be looking at their Twitter accounts going, what happened? I thought I had 1 million. I thought I had 1.5 million fans. You don't, jackasses.
Right.
They were all bots. And Julie, it's so important because there's another thing that came out where 20% of men ages 18 to 45 are getting their news from podcasts, from men podcasts, from people like Rogan and people like Theo Vaughn, who are not friends of Israel, who sadly are spreading extreme blood libel about Israel. And I don't exactly know how we counter that, but we have to counter it by people keep on screaming and telling the truth. So I just think it's amazing what Mark has done, what you've done, what a lot of people have been doing in the past 2 weeks, months, years.
I think I agree with you. And I think the more who do it, it's sort of like it's a domino effect. So if this one's brave, then that one will feel emboldened, right? Like if you don't speak up, then we're definitely going to lose. And the more who do speak up, and when we have wins like we had last weekend, wow, right? When that happened with the bombing of the nuclear sites, I mean, I feel like people like stood up better, taller, prouder, and we just got to keep pushing. The left never rests. And they're always on the long game, and that's another thing that we're short on. Is we're like here. They are already they're planning, like the midterm elections are here in their head. They're not, God willing that they lose, but we've got to think short term and long term because that's what they do.
Listen, you're 100% right. And this is sort of how we all got together, was because the AFL, this is something America First Legal realized. You have to get out there. And you have to shift the narrative, how people look at you. And sadly, Republicans play by the same old playbook. They use, I don't understand it. They have so many people that want to help them, like Golan. Golan, who's in the middle of writing 2 screenplays. He's been an executive at Marvel. He's been in the movie industry since before I was born. And he's younger than me. He's younger than me. And people are begging them, let us help you. And they don't take the help. I see these videos they put out, Julie, and it's embarrassing. It's like really embarrassing. I see Mike Johnson walking out saying something, and like they're all just doing the same thing. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Who are you selling this to? Brand better. And so that's
even with the hostages, right? I've been saying from day one, every single day, and this isn't like Julie Genius, because this is how Nightline started. That's how Koppel got his, claim to fame, day one, up to day, 444 in the Iran hostage situation.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day, they should have somebody in the Republican Party going out there, rotating out. Today's day 600 and whatever. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the exact day. And we still have hostages alive and not alive in Gaza. And by the way, bring them home.
I was about to say this.
Oh my God.
This is, to me, but Israel, you think the Republicans are bad at branding? Israel is really bad at branding. When I was a kid, and I was living half my life in Israel, when I was a kid, I used to say to my father all the time, and I was too young to know that I was asking any kind of deeper question. My dad reminds me of this. We would sit and watch the debates, and they would have the guy from the PLO who was handsome with a big, beautiful head of hair in the sharpest suit you've ever seen, like Alan Rickman in Die Hard style, with a British accent, studied at Oxford, and everything he said sounded like Churchill on the Mound. And then you'd have a big, fat, sweaty Israeli. The buttons would be a little off on the shirt, the ties open, with the thickest accent. And I would
Frayed
go,
collar.
I mean, what the hell's going on here? So even as a kid, I was like, this is the dichotomy. Maybe I want to be on that guy's team. And I've never forgotten it because it's never really gotten better. And recently, not long ago, post October 7th, they had Elon Levy, who is, a guy who at least he was well dressed and thin and attractive. And somehow, Bibi immediately got rid of him because his wife didn't like him. But it was like they just can't get a handle on this. So I think about this all the time. When you say bring them home, you are putting the onus on us. It is our fault. It is our problem. It is now our problem to solve, as opposed to the thing that I can't. And now I've said it, and some other people have said, I had the same thought. Like, why didn't everybody let my people go?
Yeah.
It's kind of already a branded phrase that would have been resonant. And the fact that right now, and I'm not blaming you for this, that you didn't know it was 630 days is because nobody's talking about it. I know because of the circles I'm in.
I didn't, Julie, in your defense, I didn't know the exact day count either.
That's what I'm saying. Why would you? Because the media is certainly not going to cover that. The only thing I've seen the media cover when it comes to this, and I don't want to veer into this subject matter. Don't worry, Judah. We've already beat a dead horse when it comes to this. But every day I see a new news story about how Israelis are shooting Palestinians that are innocently standing in line for aid. And each day it turns out that story isn't true, and it doesn't stop them from doing the next one and the next one, the next one. The one I saw today, the headline literally said the Israeli soldiers are instructed to shoot them, if nothing's happening. And then you read the article and it says, and some of the soldiers were killed. And it's like, your headline didn't match your news story, because they know they're only going to read the headline. They're trying to inflame. So why would you know it's 630 days? Can anybody who isn't a strong Jewish or Israeli advocate name the hostages? No. And they should all be household names. We all knew when a black basketball player lady smuggled weed into Russia, everybody knew her name. So the fact that we don't know these people's names, that's shameful, and it has to do with the branding that Judah's talking about.
Absolutely.
And it's something I brought up to you immediately when I met you in another chat, Golan. I said to you, I felt really uncomfortable when I went to one of the Bring Them Home events. I didn't like the framing, because when you're saying bring them home, at the same time, it was hurting Israel's response, because Israel wasn't afforded the luxury of bring them home. They had to destroy Hamas by any means necessary. And I really think that those mixed messaging really hurt Israel at the same time. I just want to move on to the last subject, because I love that Julie's here. And just so everybody knows, I didn't meet her as Mark's wife. I just met her as Julie from America First Legal. And I just thought, wow, this is really cool what they're doing. I just found it amazing. Again, I'm not plugging America First Legal, but you brought something up that's extremely important. And I think the media knows this in a way. I think the media, I know they hate him or claim they hate him, but they know Trump is something special. They know that they're witnessing something historic. They'll never admit it. They'll never say it out loud, Julie, but he's a visionary. Does he have everything plotted out? No. It's like when he saw a woman's skating ring and said, I see something better. And he saw something. It's like Bugsy Siegel in the desert seeing Vegas. Trump sees something that nobody else saw in the Middle East. He sees it. He has a vision. He doesn't have it all mapped out, but he knows there's something special about it. And he knows about that special relationship with a place like with Israel specifically, and only, that's there defending it, and that's there to protect the Abraham Accords. He's a visionary, and I don't think we'll ever see one like him for 100 years. So I pray, like you said, that we are thinking about the future, because if we don't think about the future, we're going to get the same goofs that we've had in the past.
You're right. And this brings to mind, so one of the organizations that I work really closely with is an organization called Young Jewish Conservatives. It was founded in 2011 by a rabbi in Atlanta, a rabbi in Jerusalem, and my son. And the concept behind it basically is the name. Young people who are of our faith, but who are politically conservative, who feel I'm alone, I have no home. And YJC was formed with the concept like, no, you do have a home. We will give you a voice. We want you to speak up. We want you to be our grassroots warriors. So they started the trips to Israel, and it was very different than Birthright, because Birthright is go to Israel, learn to love the country, go to some amazing bars. I mean, it does good stuff, don't get me wrong. But the difference between young Jewish conservatives and some of these other groups is you have to be politically conservative to go. And you understand that when you go to Israel, you're going to have a great time, but you're also going to have briefings with leadership and so forth. So that when you come back, you know who you are. You know that Israel is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. And you're able to tell that story and perpetuate what we all know to be true. And the basis for the entirety of Western civilization started in the Holy Land by the Jewish people, on and on and on, right? So I've been involved with YJC since 2011, advised them do many, many different things with young Jewish conservatives. So coincidentally, 2 days ago, on this past Wednesday, we, YJC, had an event with the administration. And the thought behind it was my colleague Yitzhak, who's the rabbi from Atlanta, and I wanted to bring young Jewish conservatives. When I say young, anywhere from college through mid-30s, 40s, because that's getting increasingly young every single day of the week since I'm like getting older, to bring them to the White House to sit with members of the administration, to hear what the administration's doing, and then not like just be there for this really cool photo op that you can say I was at the EEOB and took my photo by the White House, but to now take what you know and go out and be a warrior, because you can have lawsuits, you can have the administration do their work, we can have the legislature, the Congress do something, but what are we, the people, going to do from a grassroots perspective to fight this fight? Not literally, but with words and actions in the street. So that was the modus operandi, if you will, for having this. So Yitz and I hand selected the 110 to 120 who came. And we had a conversation. We had presentations. There were 8 members of the administration who took the time. This is like really huge. I mean, as you said, both of you said, this is an administration that actually like works for a living day in and day out. But Harmy Dillon came, Leo Terrell came, Sebastian Gorka, Keith Sunderling from DOL came, Paula White, who heads the Faith Office, the Jewish outreach guy, Martin Marks, is the person with whom we spoke. Paula's director came. And then a gentleman whose name I forget, I apologize. He's with GSA, who was with the private sector, a really successful financial guy who left a lucrative job in the private sector to come work for the Trump administration to participate in reviewing contracts to make sure that, you know, the government isn't handing out contracts to companies that deal with BDS and so forth and so on. So they all spoke, spent a lot of time. And then afterwards, we had a strategy session with a really good kosher sushi. You guys come to DC, it's on me. Anyway, so it was really great. And Will Scharf, you know, you know who Will Scharf is? He's the staff secretary. He's the one who says, Mr. President, this executive order says this. He's the guy behind Trump all the time. And he and Leo Terrell came to our after event just so they could be with these young people. And I got beyond my shyness and, you know, did a whole rah speech for these young people. But the reason I'm sharing all this is because Paula White, who runs the Faith Office, stood up and she told a story about Trump that immediately came to mind when you were speaking. And she said in 2011, I believe it was, out of the blue, private citizen Trump reached out to her and said, Pastor, I've been listening to you for quite some time. I love your sermons. And they formed a friendship and they spoke back and forth. Called during one of his conversations, he said, I'm really troubled. I've noticed that our country is shifting away from faith. People don't talk about God. And he just was giving her examples of this lack of presence of God that he was aware of when he grew up. And it was really troubling to him. And he said, I don't know, like I need to do something about this. And I'm paraphrasing. I'm not, doing her story justice, but you get the gist. But he was so prescient. He was so thinking ahead. What you were saying, Judah, something's wrong. I got to do something. And he said, you know what? I don't know. Should I run for, I'm not a guy in the public office. I'm this, real estate guy, this construction guy in New York City, but something's not right. And he said, I don't know, maybe I should run for president. And she went to New York and he asked her, what do you think? And she said, I want to pray on it. And she brought people in and they prayed about it. And that was part of the decision that caused him to go down that escalator in 2015. That was not some frivolous, what the heck, I did the, check, I've done The Apprentice, check, I've done this, check, I've done the entire west side of Midtown New York, blah, blah, blah. This was a decision that he came to because he thought ahead, because he saw a problem, he had a vision, and it was a vision, and I'm framing it, she didn't put it this way, but it so fits in to what you so smartly observed about him and his personality. It's so in keeping with what you said, because that was part of his motivation to run, was lack of God in our country. I don't know how many people know that story.
No, it's an amazing podcast. I think it's an amazing story, and I think there are a lot of amazing stories like this. We have to wrap up, but I want to ask you both a question. I'll go to you, Golan, first. The beginning of the week, I know it was a little rough for you, and we were going back and forth on certain things, and I was trying to convince you, have a little faith. And Julie, this is in reference to when Trump called the ceasefire, and I said to Golan, it had to be done. It had to be done. And we've been going back and forth on this, and not in a bad way, just talking, which is what we should be doing. And we're allowed to have feelings and express those feelings. Something people tell us often we're not allowed to do. Golan, are you feeling a lot better about how things have wrapped up? In a sense, how the relationship, when you see that post that Trump did for Bibi, and that he was almost looking out for Bibi. He knew Bibi needed an off-ramp of how to stop this situation, almost get Israel out of the news for a little bit. And he did a masterclass job in not just helping and saving Israel, but helping and saving a friend in Bibi. That's what he did for Bibi. Have you come to that a little bit?
Here's my answer, and it's a complex answer. I feel like the relationship between Bibi and Trump, which I will admit I had some trepidation, about what was going on. But each time I had trepidation, as I mentioned yesterday, Trump did something that made me go, oh, I didn't see that coming. So when he first went to Bibi and he said, do not go into Iran. And I was like, why would he, okay, behind closed doors, why would you say that on the world stage? This is showing the daylight between. And then, of course, he was whispering in his ear the whole time, what I really mean is go do this other thing. And I was like, okay, you got me. I was worried, and then you showed me why not to be worried. And each time that happened, I think that I'm at the point now where you can't shake the foundation anymore. You can see that these two guys, despite everything the media wants me to believe, and they really are trying to get me to believe it, these two guys are ironclad. They do stand shoulder to shoulder. They do walk in lockstep. They do have a shared belief in what is good and what is evil and what to do about that in the world. So in terms of the relationship, at least with this administration, between Israel and America and the leaders of those two countries, I feel very, very good. But, and here's where it gets a little more complex, I still feel like right now we are in, and I will fully admit before I say this, that this could change at any moment, okay? And I've seen it change 50 times in the last week. So who knows what's happening in the next 12 seconds. But I am worried. I am worried that this ceasefire exists and that Israel feels like, despite the jubilation on the call, despite the relationship that Trump and Bibi have, that Israel once again was asked not to finish the job. And we already know that the Ayatollah, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like all the rest, are very quick to sign ceasefire agreements. Someone smarter than me said to an Islamist, a ceasefire is just a way to rearm. And I believe that is true. And we know how many ballistic missiles they're building. And we know that enough ballistic missiles launched at the same time, like the 1,000 they intended to launch, could have the same effect as Hiroshima. So, it's one of those things that even if they don't have a nuclear bomb, there's still a material threat to Israel. Am I still worried about that? I am. And I hope that we will see something beyond. The dogs agree with me that we will
No, they were
agree.
telling you to rap.
Is that what it is? That we will see something change on that front that will make me feel a little more sanguine. At the moment, still a little bit nervous about that. But, every day I just pray that everything's going to be okay.
Gotta have faith. There's magic in the night. You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. And I can't believe I just quoted Bruce Springsteen, who I absolutely hate right now. But Julie, I can't help but say I thank God for this relationship. I think everybody was hedging on the fact that there would be regime change, that the dissidents would fight back, that there would be more of them. And numerically, there were less than there was under Obama in 2016. So I think they tried to do their best and get the people to take over the Ayatollah. It didn't happen, and they had to end it. And I love the combo of the two of them. Nobody owns each other as being portrayed by these nut jobs in the media. I mean, it's always the Rothschilds.
Right.
It always comes back to the Rothschilds. So final thoughts, Julie.
So final thoughts. I think we've all felt like it's been a roller coaster, right? Trump goes to the Mideast, passes over Israel. We have our "are you kidding me" moment. He said the Houthis are bombing the U.S. They're hitting Israel. Trump says, okay, stop Houthis. They stop. And we're like, hello, they're still doing this to Israel. I mean, it was just like you either, depending upon your habits, like lost a lot of weight because you were so nervous you couldn't eat, or you were like one of those compulsive eaters when you were nervous. It was like one extreme or the other. I went running. I mean, like it was just like it's been tough, and I was really concerned about the relationship. But now I really do believe there is no daylight. I really do believe that it was masterful. I do believe that when Sarah Netanyahu was talking about like what color the flowers should be for the wedding, Trump knew exactly or Melania did, what color flowers, because it was all part of the grand scheme, right? At the same time. And so I do believe that. But like you, go on. It's the old trust but verify. Whether it's because we've been screwed so many times, the royal we, or because we're smart, and I choose to think it's actually both of those, we can't rest. We still need those hostages returned, released. We need certain things to be in place. Are we a heck of a lot better than we were? I mean, a week ago tonight, we were like wringing our hands going, oh my God, yeah. Steve Bannon was just at the White House, that disgusting anti-Semite Jew hater. And that's what these, you got to call them out to bring full circle to this conversation on who's who. So I think we're in a world apart. I think we can enjoy our Shabbat. And I also think we never, ever put down our guard, because there's more we got to do.
Well, I'll just end it with this. I think our biggest fear isn't the now. It's what happens when Trump is gone. And I think that's at least my biggest fear. As long as Trump is president, I have no fear for Israel's safety. Absolute none. And Julie, you brought up a name just now, and nobody has brought this up, so you could quote Judah Friedman and say, this is where you got it from. Do you know who he announced the 2-week thing to? It was when he had lunch with Steve Bannon. So everybody plays the fool sometimes. And Steve Bannon that day played the fool.
He sure did.
And I haven't heard anybody.
By the way,
I haven't heard anybody bring
Sachs, shall we say, Mr. Cargo Pants Flannel Shirt Goldman Sachs, please.
Yeah. And I love everybody that says, oh, he went to jail for the president. No, he went to jail for himself.
Exactly.
Okay. And okay, on that note, I want to thank everybody. I respond to a lot of comments on Truth and all the places, and I get to know people. And somebody had cancer in 2015. They had a bad biopsy, and they asked me to pray for her. And so I bring that up because everybody that listens, you could pray for this person. And I do believe in prayer. And I'm honored that she shared this information with me. And that means the world to me. It means the world that we could have a little show or a big show or whatever type of show. and people feel safe to say those things. It means that we're doing something right, that somebody shares that information with me. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank them for sharing it with me, and I pray for you. And I know everybody that's going to be listening to this will pray for you. And I thank you. And I thank Julie for when my father was very ill. Julie was checking in on me. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Golan was too. Everybody I knew was. I have some great people that I surround myself, that I've been blessed to have myself surrounded by. And I want to remind everybody, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram Daily Cheat Sheet, Substack Daily Cheat Sheet, of course, YouTube Daily Cheat Sheet, and of course, steal somebody's phone and hit the Daily Cheat Sheet and make them subscribe and follow us. They might not like us, but who cares? Force them to give us 5 stars because we love them no matter what. That's who we are. And on that note, I want to wish everybody a great weekend, but also everybody have a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.
God bless. Thank you, guys. It's been a real treat and honor.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank once again, Julie Strauss Levin, for coming on the show. It means everything because of who you are.
My pleasure and honor.